Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Coffee with Dick and Sharon. I'm Dick Price, the editor of LA Progressive.
And I'm Sharon Cale, the publisher of the LA Progressive.
So once again, we're going to return to a topic that we've addressed a bit in the past. That is the incident with the coach at Oklahoma University, Cale Gundy, and his ultimate resignation because he was in a meeting with his young football players, and he read the N-word multiple times in reading something off somebody's iPad, and caused quite a media fury, and he was either forced to resign or offered to resign as a consequence.
Right. So as we talk about this, you guys should know that obviously Dick and I are a mixed race couple, and we often have discussions. Obviously, most of our discussions are not being recorded. And sometimes we have disagreements on issues of race, or maybe not so much disagreements, but we are not necessarily coming from the same place when we talk about issues. And one of these issues was the Cale Gundy issue. And it just so happened that this morning I got an email from a company or a media outlet that is doing some work around multiracial mixed race couples. It's called Interracial Marriage in a Polarized America. And they're wanting to interview mixed race couples and talk about how they deal with particularly during these days and times, how we deal with coming from different perspectives when we're addressing the polarization, racial polarization in the United States. So taking that discussion from that perspective, I want Dick to, if you can, lay out the conversation that we had about Cale Gundy.
Well, so let me say that, yes, Sharon and I occasionally disagree, but our conversation around race can be fairly interesting because it's such a critical issue and it impacts us so far. And sometimes I think we each kind of feel we represent our whole race as a Black race and a white race. You want me to weigh out to lay out, well, so on the thing with Cale Gundy, one concern I've had is,
well, if I may, let's talk about what is Cale Gundy, what happened. So there are people who could be listening that don't know anything about Cale Gundy. Who is he?
Well, okay, so I started by saying that Cale Gundy was a coach, assistant coach at the University of Oklahoma, longtime football coach. He was in a meeting, I believe it was with his football team, probably with new freshman football players. And one of the players was not paying attention, and so Cale Gundy picked up the iPad that the young man was looking at, and he read what was there. And what was there included the N-word several times. And rather than stopping and not saying the word, he read through it, and from that led to the athletic director disavowing that kind of language at the school, and Cale Gundy either offering to or being forced to resign.
So I think you just said something that maybe my understanding of how this happened is a little bit different. He did read it. I don't know if the N-word was mentioned several times in the reading. It's my understanding that he read this several times, that he read it more than once. So I don't know if that's what.
No, I didn't understand it. I just thought that he'd read it. He read it to his assembled football players, and it had the N-word in it. And so he said the N-word more than once, and apparently did not stop and apologize or explain it, but just later resigned.
Well, the head coach said that he read it more than once. Now, that could be interpreted to mean that he read a single statement where the N-word was mentioned one time, but he read this statement more than once, or the N-word was used multiple times on the iPad, and that he used the N-word or spoke the N-word multiple times in front of his students, and did it, his explanation for doing that was that he says he didn't realize what he was saying. So Dick and I had a discussion about this, and there was a little bit of conflict between us. And I don't want to characterize what you were feeling when the conflict arose. I'll give you an opportunity to talk about how you felt, and then I'll talk about how I felt.
Well, so as I understand it, I mean, what you said about how many times he read it or how many times he said it, that's a distinction without a difference. Apparently, though, he said the N-word multiple times to a group of people. There was no indication that he stopped there and apologized. He just went on about his business. The athletic director indeed issued a statement disavowing that, which if you give him the benefit of the doubt, he heard what happened and he marched down to the assistant coach's office and told him to pack his bags. To me, it sounds like a CYA statement, a cover your ass statement, like the Michael Weinstein company saying, oh no, Harvey Weinstein company say, oh, we have a policy where we never touch women inappropriately. The football player himself said he didn't realize what he was saying, which I think deeply is not terribly believable at all. I don't know if he believes that's true. I mean, I've known people to do some real dumb things. I've done some dumb things, not around this kind of language, but it's not very believable. So anyway, if you, on the one extreme with Cale Gundy, you could say that he really at heart is kind of a racist and has used this kind of language over the years. And this was just the one time that the wrong people heard it, complained, made a scene, leading to his resignation. My sense, my more charitable view is that he read it, he had to know he was reading it, but he thought this was a chance to show these young players, many of them Black, that he was too cool for school. He was right with them, he was like them, and which is stupid, but somewhat less racist.
So this is the road. And how we define racism. So from my perspective, I look at racism as any kind of behavior that results in a racist outcome, regardless of the intention of the person that's engaging in the behavior. So like, and Dick and I, we have this conversation, like if you're at a party and you have words with someone and they stomp on your foot, and they do it with intention and with malice, that's pretty damn bad. Your foot hurts. On the other hand, you could be at that same party and someone stomps on your foot without realizing it, no intention, no malice, but your foot is still going to hurt. So regardless of the intention of the person who engaged in the behavior, what I tend to look at is the injury. What happened and what can we do to remedy the injury? In the case of the party, does this person need to have an x-ray? Does this person need to have their foot attended to by a physician? And so generally, when I'm thinking about racism, I'm looking at it from the end of a person who's on the receiving end, regardless of whether it's intentional or not. Now, I believe that there's a continuum of the way racism gets played out in this country. I think that if you want to look at it like Dick just described in a more charitable way, it can start absolutely unintentional and innocent and go all the way to lynchings and slavery, but it's all on the same continuum when you're looking at or you're gauging it by the harms that were caused.
Yeah, I mean, the distinction between intent and impact is often one that's made. But and certainly on the receiving end of this racist activity or whatever the activity is, the impact is the same and is offensive. on the intent impact, though, that's important as well. I mean, there's levels of condemnation of the people who, if you accidentally step on somebody's foot and you apologize, well, then you're less of a villain than if you go around the party purposely stomping on people. On the impact part, obviously, I mean, this issue, this 2-minute speech that this guy gave in front of a bunch of football players could be a teaching moment, perhaps. I don't know. It seems like it would be useful if it was.
Yeah. So for me, what I wanted and where you and I had this sort of a disconnect is it appears that in discussing it, you were identifying with or giving a more charitable perspective to Gundy's behavior, and you were looking at this through his lens. And I was looking at it through the lens of perhaps a parent that may have sent their kid to that school, or a student who was sitting in the audience when Gundy is spouting off the N-word, regardless of whether they were his own words. The word actually came out of his mouth. He is a person in a position of authority, and he is a white man. And so I felt that I actually didn't really take a position on whether or not he should have resigned, but I am not shedding any tears over his resignation.
So it's absolutely true. I oftentimes try to put myself in another person's head. When somebody does something, I will try to imagine what their life is like and why they're doing what they're doing. In some cases, it's impossible. The murder of all the kids in Uvalde, Texas, I can't even put my brain inside that guy's brain. But in Cale Gundy, yes, I was probably trying. What was he really about? I mean, here he's a middle-aged guy, been a coach for many years, coached a lot of black players, got a lot of black players, including famous ones like Adrian Peterson, standing up for him. I said, well, what was going on with him? Does that excuse it? No, I say it's stupid. I think he's lying when he says, or very likely lying when he said he didn't realize what he was doing. I mean, I just can't understand. I can't put myself in that head now, married to a black woman for 20 years, or when I was an 18-year-old kid. If I came across an offensive word and I was reading it, maybe I would mumble through it the first time, but I would sure as heck stop right away.
Okay, so where do we land on this? Do we disagree? Because it started out we were disagreeing.
We disagree, and
but what do we disagree on?
In full revelation, anytime Sharon and I have a discussion around race, I'm on pins and needles, because I know that if I take a half a step wrong, I'm going to hear about it, and that makes me nervous. I mean, that's
Well, that's good. That's good that you can say that on camera. So it makes you nervous because what? You think that I'm going to hurt you in some way? You're going to suffer some kind of consequence? What's the consequence?
As I did this morning.
And what was the consequence?
You shunned me.
What do you
mean?
You
moved away. I didn't get my morning hug. I didn't get a kiss today. Nothing.
Okay. All right. So look, we've come a long way on this issue. I stand firm on my positions when I am talking about something that I have been studying and living for 65 years. Yes, I'm 65 years old. And for you have not been studying this as long as I have. Would you agree with that?
I wouldn't. I mean, I haven't been studying it with the intensity you do, but I mean, I was out working for the Freedom Riders at 13 in the suburbs of Minneapolis. I'm not totally clueless. I will say one issue that I had with the Cale Gundy thing is we can't lump all varieties, all examples of racism into the same mix. There's a distinct difference between Cale Gundy and what he did, and those 3 men who gunned down very purposely Mount Aubrey and the streets in Georgia. I mean, so somehow if we conflate all racism together, well, then we ignore the fact when it's really harmful.
When it's really harmful, what does that mean? Really harmful. So who gets to be the arbiter of what is a little bit harmful, really harmful? Who gets to decide?
Well, I would say the family of Mount Aubrey said that was really harmful. And we don't actually know if the black football players were offended. Maybe they were. I'm not excusing that behavior. I'm not sad that he resigned. It was stupid, but I've been around the world a lot, and I know there's a lot of nastiness in this world.
Okay, so we've got to end this video some kind of way. And what I want to agree, so what I want to agree with is we really don't have the vernacular. We don't have the language to speak with specificity about the harms caused by racism. And for that reason, there is a clumping. We can't really, as a nation, because we've neglected this issue, it's difficult to really speak on the issue in an intelligent way, in an informed way, and in a way that most people will understand. So does that mean that we just don't have the discussion? I think not. I think that it's hurt us to not have the discussion. I think it's pretty brave of you and I to be putting this out, to let people know that this is an issue that we struggle with in our own marriage. Wait.
Did you record this?
I did record this.
So I disagree that we can't discuss this issue with intelligence. I think it's important that
I didn't mean we, you and I.
I mean, we as Americans, as the country, especially as we are heading into an uglier era, it would seem. I think it's important. I think racism, as you often say, is at the core of every ill that plagues our country. We talk about the centrality of race. It doesn't mean race is the only thing you can ever talk about. But if you're talking about an issue of importance, whatever it might be, Medicare for all, the design of highways, if you ignore the role that racism played in it, then you're missing the boat.
Yeah. So that's it for Dick and Sharon today. We'll be joining you guys next week with another installation of Arguing with Dick and Sharon.
Does Dick get a kiss?
Nah, maybe. Okay. All right. See you guys.